Gotta use the right one. One of the works, guys.
It's just to stretch your legs. It was intentional, right? You just needed to get up and stretch a little. That was your plan all along. I'm trying to help you out.
Kenny said Sarah's got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. The baby is a breech, so they're going to try to see if they can move him. And then she's got another appointment next Monday. Things are much different than take it to C-section. So it would be probably about a week earlier.
I told her this is preschool age. I'm going to work the slides from back here. Definitely can't. Yeah, I think.
Oh no, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah's going to.
Oh yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming to this little gathering here. As many of you know, probably participated in the listening posts that were held back in May and June of this year. This is the presentation of those observations and recommendations from the group that did the listening. Please keep an open mind. It's an opportunity for everybody to have shared their concerns or ideas or opportunities for us to grow as a congregation. So, that being said, I have Pastor Becky Bollinger. That thing's working.
Can you hear me now? Everybody can hear me, right? All right, assume the stance. Let's pray. You ready? Oh, gracious God, you are so good to us. It is so good to be your daughters and sons. It is so good to have this wonderful kingdom building work to do. And we only do it relying on you, holding on to you, praying with others to you. So be with us every step of the way, gracious God, into our new beginnings and to all the wonderful things that you want us to do. Help us to listen to each other. Help us to build each other up. Help us to be your children. Always in the name of your Son and our Savior. Amen. I am Pastor Becky Bolander, and I am serving, I'm actually retired, but probably you know that pastors do not retire, ever. So I am serving at St. John's. Oh yeah, one does. We had the first one ever. Dave is going to retire. Pastor Dave. Serving at St. John's in Oak Harbor, and I drive there. I live actually in Sylvania, Toledo, so I make this beautiful drive out there every day and just watch the fields and everything. So even though it sounds like a long drive, I really love it, especially after coming. I served for 13 years up north of Detroit and fought that traffic, and let me tell you, I never want to go back. Love the people, but didn't like the drive. So I'm so glad to be here today. And it's been wonderful to listen to all of you, and just it's a privilege to do this. So thank you for allowing us to be here on your journey.
And I'm Pastor Sarah Shaw. I serve as the Director of Community Engagement in the Synod office. I came in right before the pandemic, but before that, I served in a little village called Waldo for about 10 years. Fried bologna sandwiches, some of you are nodding, right? Yeah, okay. You know where we are now. They have good pie, too. Very important information. I served as a parish pastor for a long time, walked with them for years and years of ministry. That was my first call. And now I'm serving as the Director of Community Engagement in the Synod office. And I've also been part of the listening post. So if you've seen my face a couple times around here, that's why. I've come to listen and just learn from all of you.
And my name is Jean Emery. I happen to be one of the call facilitators in Northwest, but in this team, on the Walking Together team, I'm the thorn between these two.
No, not at all.
Yes, I am. As a parishioner of Glenwood Lutheran Church, I have been in situations that we all experience in our church life. So that's why it's good to be here with all of you. I was at several of the listening posts and learned a lot about you and about the history of Bethlehem, and also learning that we are all alike. As we do Christ's work together, we need each other. So to you, I am very glad and consider myself now an adjunct member of Bethlehem.
All right, so Pastor Becky, Jean, and I were part of the listening teams that came. Sometimes you got all of us, sometimes based off of availability, you got a combination of us, but we were the team that did the listening posts. We listened to about 30 family units, right? So a lot of those conversations involved more than one person. And we also did an interview with Pastor Matt and Pastor Dave for their insights, okay? All right, so I want to begin by just you are a very lovable congregation, right? I've only been here for a while, and there is a lot to love in this place. So that's why we wanted to focus on love, right? We come.
Have Sherry introduce herself?
I can have Sherry introduce herself, yes.
She can't get out of this.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherry Krieger. I'm on Bishop's staff as well as Director of Leadership Development for Congregational Care. And I work with congregations all throughout the Synod in mission and vision and sometimes difficult conversations, and have worked with Ken and oh my gosh, Scott, through these months and years, and so it's a pleasure to be with you. We established the Walking Together team for times and situations just like this, and so we have wonderful pastors and lay leaders who have experienced things like you are experiencing, and it is our honor and privilege to be on this journey with you. So go right ahead.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm sorry. We should have put your name up there too, then I would have remembered. But this is actually, Sherry Krieger has done a lot of ministry with congregations, and she's found over and over again that there needs to be outlets for good listening. And so really, this was her brainchild, actually. The listening teams have been that. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear to you that you're a very lovable congregation. We spend a lot of time here, and Pastor Becky and Jean and I always said that. This is a really great group of people with a lot of gifts. Needing to have conversations around listening doesn't mean that you're not, right? One of the most loving things that we can do as people of faith is actually listen to people's stories and experiences and let them feel what they actually feel. So that's why we're beginning here, because we have to know the story from your perspective in order to know how to move forward. So the point of this isn't for some outsiders to come in and to tell you what to do, right? The point of it was to listen to you and let it all sit, and then see the common themes. This keeps coming in and out. The common themes that kind of float to the surface. There were some very obvious themes that kind of continued to make giving me the mood. There were some obvious themes that kind of came to the surface over and over again as we were listening. So what I want you to do as we're talking is to be listening. Does this ring true? Could I tell a story from my own life and my experience here at Bethlehem that affirms what we found, right? We're not reporting everything that we heard, because we would be here for a really long time, and you guys have other things to do today. But just common themes that we heard over and over again, and that as parish pastors and leaders in the church, they would be the things that we would focus on, okay? All right. So, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. And most of us have, I think it was jarring for some folks to just say, you can tell us whatever your experience is. Most of us have not really had an experience where we've actually been truly listened to and had the mic and been able to share whatever we think. The other thing that I really want to point out to you, and it was incredibly obvious, we said it over and over again when we were here, is how incredibly gifted this congregation is. You have an excellent location. You're nestled in this community that has a ton of great resources. You as congregations, when we spoke to people, you're gifted, you're smart, you have good insights, you have good reads on situations that were happening. You have a great preschool that's in the building that does great ministry for kids. You sit in this congregation, it's intergenerational, right? There are little kids and there are older folks, and you interact with each other. That is such a huge gift in a congregation. So I don't want you to walk away from today thinking that you don't have gifts, because you certainly do. And I think that all of those are going to serve you well in this next chapter, okay? All right, so again, we're going to go through general observations. We're going to kind of go back and forth, and I want you to be listening. Does this ring true? Can I think of experiences that I've had at Bethlehem that confirm this? And then if not, we need to know, because that's how we guide next steps. So this one is about echoing back to you what we heard from you, okay? And asking whether it rings true.
Did you want to do some general overview or no?
I think we're good.
Okay.
All right. Becky, you want to?
And also, just so that you know, we are going to hand out a pamphlet with everything on it so that you can kind of digest it, because we're aware that there's a lot to take in. And as you can see on your table, there's a meeting, kind of coming back together and then making decisions about what do we do next. And I really encourage you to come to that and invite others. As you know, I told you I'm serving at St. John's Oak Harbor, and two of our members, our council president and another person, will be here. St. John's went through something like this. I mean, they went through some really tough times, and they are in a much different place, and now just have the joy of sharing that. So I think it's good. I mean, it's a large church like yours, so it's good to hear what they're experiencing now, a year out of that. So that will be, I think, a time to hear, a feet on the ground experience from someone. So observation one, as you can read the title, lack of clarity regarding Pastor Matt's departure. And we heard a lot about the, confusion and frustration about specific events that led up to Pastor Matt leaving. It seemed like some people knew he was leaving, some people didn't know, but overall it was very confusing, is what we heard. So just kind of see if that rings true for you, and you don't have to give me any sign, but you can sit with that. Seems like some people know things and others don't. We heard that quite a bit. And the repeated articulation about why things happened, questions about why people aren't coming to church, and suspicion that's related to Pastor Matt's departure. There was, there was kind of two sides of this, and then there was also the in-between, people that probably, aren't as active, didn't know anything about what was going on, and then people kind of divided about how much they knew that were here quite a bit. General sense of speculation, finger pointing and division, and no sense of closure. So you can sit with that, and you don't need to have any, but see if that rings true for you. Oh, okay. So the recommendation, I'll do the recommendation, I'll pass it back to you. So, and these are just recommendations. You might come back with something more that needs to be done, or you might identify one of these as more important or less important, but the recommendation, what happened is after these listening posts, we all wrote kind of our own, what we heard, and then Jacob Henry put them together for us, kind of collated what they were, and we also made recommendations, so he put it in a much more organized form than we had it. Thank you, Jacob. So recommendations, state the facts, acknowledge the grief. Whenever there's something, we go through something, it's a state of grief, and in all different forms. Model honest communication, kind of like, I always call it putting things on the table, because they're going to come up again and again. And, when we put them on the table, we deal with them. And, but I always say, God can get us through anything as long as we put it on the table and ask him to help us get through anything. So put it on the table. And then, of course, begin to build an environment of trust. Of course, when you have some people knowing something or some people suspicious. So, that the whole trust with communication and talking it through is really important.
Okay, so the second observation, and we pretty much heard this from everyone that we interviewed, was a significant breakdown in communication and trust. Now, I have to remember, this is happening during COVID times, so no doubt that was intensified by the environment in which that we were already, but we heard this over and over again, the lack of clear communication between pastor, council, leadership, and parish. And then we heard lots of conversations around parking lot conversations about cliques. We heard gossip. We heard leadership meetings without the pastor or certain members who should be involved. We heard pastoral leadership issues, anonymous letters, infighting and nastiness and power plays. I would say that of all the themes that nearly everyone talked about communication issues. So communication is something that we all are working on, right? And it's a constant thing that we have to work on in relationships, in families, in church families. It's something that we constantly have to be building. And interestingly enough, like when we listened to you, you had suggestions on how we could grow in communication. Some of the things were prioritize building trust between leadership and congregation. And I heard from people that they want to know what's happening around the leadership table. That information almost needs to be over communicated so that everyone can know it. Congregational leaders need to adopt and be accountable to high standards in a code of conduct. We need to work on ending parking lot conversations, don't recognize anonymous complaints, hold meetings only when everyone is there and involved in them. Communication for us human beings is the thing that we're always working on, right? And especially in the midst of conflict, those things tend to intensify. So it's the thing that we have to do. And when we're in times of conflict, the tendency is to want to communicate less because it's uncomfortable, right? Who wants to have an uncomfortable conversation? But really, in the midst of times of conflict or transition, our job is to over-communicate, right? And to do multiple means again and again, because that's what leads to healthy relationships, okay? And that's not me being smart. That's what you said when we listened to you. So see if it rings true to your experience.
And once again, it's kind of the same inability to foster connection and community. Lots of issues were raised regarding Pastor Matt's inability or seeming inability to foster relationships, to be present, or lead staff well, consistently or calmly. Although prayer, and this was said many times, prayer and his teaching gifts were recognized. Those were his real strong points, is what a lot of people said. High expectation of visitation and pastoral care expressed as primary pastoral role, with little support for pastor to attain the expectation while tending to all other aspects of ministry. Let me read that again because it's a long sentence. So there was a high expectation of visitation and pastoral care. What we heard is that's a primary, that's something super important to this congregation. But there didn't seem to be a lot of support for the pastor to attain these while tending to all other aspects of ministry. Maybe that's, it was, I guess, the acknowledgement that there is a lot to do when you're in pastoral care, and probably some kind of plan to support that expectation and to make it so it can really happen would be important. Recommendation 3, discernment about priorities in pastoral leadership. Acknowledge and own pastoral need for relational skills. We heard again and again, we want a pastor who's relational. And you just have to say that. That's important, and that's important, and that's good. It has to, once again, put that on the table. Spend time discerning other priorities. So as you move forward, and this is kind of moving forward, thinking about who's going to lead Bethlehem well. So a relational pastor, and then probably spending time, the recommendation is spend time together talking about and discerning other priorities that are right up there, because if you have that, I mean, why do we get disheartened? I mean, and I'm, as I've gone through, if the expectations of one person's here and the expectations of the other person is here, there's not happiness, and there's not, so that has to, matching it as best you can. Before another pastor is called, of course. Explore other ministry options related to visitation and pastoral care that could assist the pastor and meet the needs, and there's some examples. Once again, as I read that, I think, what opportunities for us to be involved in ministry together. Nobody can do it alone, and it also allows us to use our gifts. Maybe you have people with lots of great gifts that could support the pastor and share visitation, share all those kind of things. And really, that's, finding your own gifts too is part of that, and finding your own ministry opportunities. So that is recommendation 3.
All right, so one of the things that has become really clear in my times visiting here is that you like to be together. You're a congregation that likes fellowship. If you stand in the back of the sanctuary when you come into Bethlehem, you're going to greet each other, you're going to shake each other's hands. You might give each other a hard time in a very loving and way, right? There's some healthy banter, good banter. But you like to be in relationship with each other. And so leadership always has to be relational as well too. So one of the things that we heard people saying is a longing for belonging, for fellowship and relationship. I heard that hunger over and over again, right? Some members felt like they don't belong, and some felt like they didn't know what was happening in their family, and that hurt them. Like they didn't know that there was information or there was something happening and they didn't know what it was. And you could see that just kind of sat on their chest, that weighed on them. Certain families seem to run the church. So I came from a church that had a big family in it, right? The gift of that is that we knew each other. The other challenge of that is that we all knew each other. Right? And we gather together, and so it's always this challenge of how do we bring new people in? How do we make them feel included? How do we keep growing and sit and be with people who we don't know? Because when we walk into church and we know somebody, we want to see the person that we love and know, right? That's what we do. But churches grow when we do the exact opposite of that. Right, is that we sit down with the person that we don't know and build a relationship there. And That's an intentional thing that I think church families always have to work on if they want to grow. Disagreement and decision-making lead to divisiveness and suspicion, right? So you could hear a language of sides over and over again in the midst of the listening posts. And I think whenever then we put ourselves on different sides, if I'm on this side and you're on this side, I'm going to be suspicious of what you do over there, right? And the story in my head will elevate to the point where, oh, look what they're doing over there, right? When that might not be the intention at all. Okay? I would say that one of your love languages is fellowship. You like this kind of stuff, right? Having a meal together, sitting down, having conversation. You were really proud the last time I came talking about VBS, right? You like fellowship. So plan social events. Do teaching events, build relationship and unity, be intentional about talking to people that you may not talk to on a regular basis. You could engage a third party in a healing process for the whole congregation. Sometimes if we, like you have a bad wound, you can put a Band-Aid on it, but if you don't actually treat it, it's still going to be there, right? So that's the whole point in some of these things is we actually want to do healing so that this doesn't come up again, because you've got better things to do. You've got ministry to do in the world and in this community. So we want to make sure we take care of it so that you can move on to the next stage. Make sense?
I was just going to, Clark will mention, but I was just going to mention as, engaging somebody to, look at where you're at. One of the other things that St. John's did is they had a third party organization kind of go through their congregational DNA, go back, and they're 150 years old. What they found was kind of interesting is that a lot of these things were not new. They had been there way back when, and they looked at it and identified it and owned it. And I see a lot of your heads nodding that was there. And it was a hard thing. There were tears, there were, but at the center of it was just the sense, we need to be forgiven for all this. And then we need to move forward. And there was a lot of they had held a retreat on a weekend and went through their history. They did a lot of work beforehand, but it was so worth it for them, is to have that done and just recognize these patterns. And then they had something called a solemn assembly, which Sherry came, the bishop came. It was one of the most powerful things that I've ever been to, where the council, everybody got up and talked about how sorry they were that these things had happened, and they were able, I think, because of that, to move forward in a very, very different way. So just a little plug for if you engage. I'm sure if that's something that you'd like to take a look at. I was just talking with somebody, a Bruning. Where is he? Right here, right in front of me. And I was saying, my dad is from Pemberville. I'm a Bruning, so I just got invited to the 100-year reunion next year. And but I don't know anything about it. And I'm so interested in knowing, because I said, you don't look dissimilar to my dad. So those DNA things run deep, And so I'm really interested in learning about that. And so it might be a really important and good thing for you to do. So I will throw that out there. Observation 5, a sense of stuckness. And I would say this is where St. John's felt too. They were just stuck in these patterns. And unfortunately, when you're stuck, negativity goes way up, and divisions widen. And then the questions linger. What happened? Why are we so stuck? How could we get out of this? How can we move forward? And though you are incredibly gifted, there's a struggle to articulate gifts and experiment with new ideas. One of the things we heard is that anytime anybody wanted to do something, the answer was not yes, but no. Not let's try it, but it won't work. And that does just keep getting, that's a stuck place. He put it tabled indefinitely and not addressed. That's another way. And then there was a pervasive scarcity mindset. Instead of that generous mindset that God gives us, that sense of abundance, and we hear, feasting and, just all those things that we can see. You look at the fields and you know that there's abundance everywhere. We know there is. But we sometimes forget that. We tend to think, oh no, we can't do that, we don't have enough. God is kind of interesting in this way, and just wonderful, because the more we give away, the more we get. The more generous we are, the more generous God is to us, and we are to each other. It's just the way the kingdom works. So it's a really important mindset to address and see, does this really sound like my God? And so I think that's a real core one, I would say. So the recommendation 5 is to lead with hope. Realize and believe in your gifts as much as God believes in you. Invest in each other. Take pride and thrive in the space that God has placed you. What a wonderful ball field back here. You've got parks, you've got Brunings in the... All right, I'm doing that a little too much, right? And continue to celebrate and use your building and technology. Like we noticed, we went up and took a tour. I think Jean and I of the nursery school. What a wonderful place. I was thinking, man, there's a lot of opportunities to do things with the kids, to celebrate the kids, to bring kids in. It's beautiful. And I love this one. A year of saying yes. Practice saying yes and see what it leads to. Karl Rahner, one of my main mentors, he's a German Jesuit. He said, and I think about this as I see, I'm one of these people that has these little pictures. Okay, what am I doing right now? He said, everything is either a yes or no to God. Every decision we make, it's we believe in you, God, or no, we don't believe in you right now. We'll do it ourselves. We'll do it our way. So practice saying yes, I think, is a super good one to think about, and an easy one to think about.
And really interestingly around that yes one is the most excitement we heard from you was when you did. Like some of you talked about some of your mission projects, like that someone would come with an idea and then the congregation would get behind them and they would do it, right? And that, you could hear the energy elevate in the persons when they were talking about that. So some of the most excitement that we heard was when you were doing things outside of your building, or you were loving or serving, or you were doing something that outstretched into the community that somebody in your congregation recognized was a need, and you all said yes. And that's when I heard energy and excitement and hopefulness. So it's there, right? No one should be discouraged. So the idea with today is that we didn't want to tell you anything new. These are the things that you told us. You told us lots of stuff, but these are the themes that came to the surface over and over again. So we have handouts. They're in that box, and our whole report is there. All of the findings, we'll send them home with you. You can read them. But we just want to know, does this ring true to your experience? Did we echo it back right? Right? Because that's going to guide like the next steps, right? We kind of have to agree that these are the things we're hearing if we're going to start to be intentional about the things that we do to go on from there, okay? So I want you to sit with that. Think about, when I'm trying to figure out whether something reads true, I always think, could I tell a story about this? Could I give an example of how this has happened? And that's the easiest way, I think, to confirm things, okay? We're going to get together again. We're going to, when you give people information, you got to digest, right? We just threw all kinds of stuff at you. So we want you to sit with it. We want you to think about it. We want you to pray over it. We want to hear whether it rings true to you. And then we want to get back together. And we want to bring in somebody who's walked a congregation through this, so you can hear from a congregation member who is led. You can hear their story, and they can be a resource to you. And then we want to talk about, like, what are some next steps that we can take from that, okay? But if these ring true, I want you to be thinking about, what would you do? If this is true, if it was right, what are things that your congregation can do as they move forward. Make sense? Again, we're grounding all of this in love, right? God's love for us, our love for God, and our love for our neighbors, right? You are nestled in this lovely community. You are surrounded by all kinds of great resources. This is a good place to be, and we want you to be a thriving community. Okay?
Amen.
Pastor Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
I got to work in your kitchen today.
So we found a new resource, a new gift.
I didn't cook. All I did was open up doors and look, and nobody yelled at me because I was looking in their cupboards. But that place is to die for. Compared to the crap we got at Glenwood. And if any of you repeat that, I will own it.
On the internet now.
Well, Jean brought the food too, so we
We only have one rule, if they open it, they clean it.
But you gotta take home also, because I don't want, it's taken me a long time to get this weight off, and I don't want this.
So, want to thank you. It's not easy to share your story. For a lot of you, it was emotional, and we could tell you were nervous. It's not easy to trust someone enough to share your story. So it was a privilege for us to be able to listen to you. We all felt like that. Yeah. And we'll be with you to help guide next steps. We're going to get together again. Think about whether this rings true. Any questions before we break? Sherry, you have anything else that you want to share?
No, unless there's questions, we're here if you have anything you need clarified.
We will get to, yes.
Just wondering, Pastor Dave, next Sunday will be his last Sunday, and where do we go from there? Do we have any plan?
We have supplies lined up for October. We've been working on securing an interim, but I've had 3 fall through. But the right one we will identify at the right time. So this will be a bit of a transition, but we have you covered for pastoral care.
I guess I would like to ask another question. This seems like it's going to be a very, very long process. Are there things that the congregation can do in the interim if it's changing the Constitution or doing some of those things that a call committee does? If we could, do some of that prep while we're doing this part.
Yeah, I think the healing process, so you need to sit with this for a minute and kind of come back then October 20th and bring your friends from the congregation to talk through. I mean, the purpose of that is what are the next steps? And some of that healing is part of exactly what you're talking about. That has to be done first before we can move into a brand new call, because we don't want to go through this again, right? Very often it's patterns that just repeat themselves, and you'll learn that through a healing process. And so if we can stop that, that's part of the work that needs to be done. But it leads to a healthier call process, and probably a quicker call process when we get that stuff, fixed. But we don't want to leave you just hanging doing it all by yourself, right? So you have the Walking Together team. We will be walking with you. We will be identifying a consistent interim pastor to be with you. We just haven't been able to do that yet. So what I have learned over these 6 years of doing this particular work is that God provides at exactly the right time. So I don't know what that means. I can't necessarily define that for you, but we're working on your behalf. You're not forgotten, and we will be figuring out pastoral care in these weeks and months to come.
I have a question. I can talk loud enough, trust me. I'll use my teacher voice, my husband's voice says this. Calm down. I want to know, now where does our transition team, because a lot of us are here today,
Yeah.
where do we fit in this that we heard today? Where do we fit in? I know we did our heritage study, and we have, there was like 4 more topics. Is that redundant of some of this? No. Okay. Well, just tell us how we fit
It might
into this
be.
picture.
Yeah, it might, that information, I would think would be part of, I know with the process that St. John did, they went all the way back 100 years and looked at council minutes. You probably didn't do that in your transition,
No, we did not.
Yeah. But I gotta tell you, what they learned was that every 15 to 20 years, the exact same issue was in those council minutes and talking that through. So I'm not saying you have to do that process. I'm not saying you have to, we'll have to figure that out. I think some of it might be redundant, but some of it, it's a kind of a parallel thing, I think, that we're doing. So we don't want to stop, but we have to tend to this. If we don't tend to this, whatever you do in transition and putting together a ministry site profile isn't going to get you the leader that you need for where God's calling you to be.
So we're running together.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
In many respects, from a call facilitator's standpoint, all of you are working together, preparing to get that ministry site profile done. So in many respects, when it comes time for the call committee to finally put that document together, they're gonna have so much information, and you're gonna grow so much before that happens, that then when the call facilitator, when Mary Satterfield presents this to a possible candidate for you, then they're gonna truly know who you are and where the possibilities are that you're gonna grow and go to serve God and the world.
It also gives this really great moment where if what you find and we find is the same, then we know we got a good read. You know what I mean? So it can confirm, or we can discover the things that are missing, right? That whenever someone says, well, you didn't tell me anything new, I'm like, well, good. Then we got the right read. Like we read it right. We heard the story. So I think these things, if they can confirm each other, then going into the call process that you have a good read on this congregation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll be glad to meet with you and the transition team to kind of talk through next steps.
Any other questions? If you go home and you think about them, we'll be back. Write them down.
Thank you for listening to us and presenting the story. I'm an engineer. I like to fix things and fix them now. Yeah. It doesn't mean I'm successful. As evidenced by the sound system. Not for lack of effort. I've said in many meetings that I have 3,600-ton sledgehammers at work. I make a square peg go through a round hole. That is not what we need to do. It's what I like to do, but it's not what we need to do. So this is a process that will take time. None of us are happy with the time period it's going through, but it's what God wants us to do, apparently. So accept it for what it is, and come up with some ideas to say yes to as a group. It's the only way we're going to get better and grow. So thank you, ladies, for coming this morning. We found the painting here on the easel. So take a look when you have time. Plan on putting it down in the lounge. And anybody else have anything to say?
That was donated by Lida Campbell.
Yes.
Is there any idea who the person is that's laying the cornerstone?
Not that I know. of.
It's
It's either him or Mel.
not back in
Just kidding.
I can
Or
see
maybe
God
Bob.
on his back.
So,
Pastor,
they're off.
Omaha.
Oh, the clothes are too modern.
Was that in the laying of the cornerstone of the,
Sanctuary.
uh,
Sanctuary building.
you think so?
That's what it said in the note.
Oh, you did say sanctuary.
Yeah.
I thought you said that.
Where was it found? In the church somewhere?
No, this.
Not in the church.
We just did it.
Oh, she just did.
Yeah.
No,
He was, William Campbell was the guy who painted it.
Yeah.
He owned the leader, from what I understand.
I don't know if it's a dad.
Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What's that?
Before we leave, could everyone stand and sing the doxology with us?
I bet we could.
Beth?
I'm not carrying the tune, no. I don't have a bucket big enough.
Yeah, I can.
Right there. You're up, girlfriend. You're up. You got
Don't trip over my purse.
Yeah,
There you go.
thank you.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above the heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Squeeze those hands.
And I might just add one thing, if you haven't seen the charts out there in the hallway, check them out, because that's what we did last Sunday with our ice cream social. We had a good time, there were 60 of us here, so a lot of you are the same folks, but there are others, check it out. I would encourage you to do so.
You guys signed up.